Hey it's TDA and welcome back to Captain of Industry, and I have to say all of that redesigning I've done over the past few episodes is really paying off, because honestly this is looking like, well, it was built with intent, which it was, but still it's a lot more organized than it was before, and honestly I'm kind of liking it. It was quite a bit of work, I'm not gonna lie, and it almost went wrong, as you could have seen in the last couple of episodes, but we're still here. So all is good. Now I do have to do a little bit of optimization here and there, because this build in particular is not running very efficiently. As you can see, the sulfur is backing up because we are actually producing more than we're using, and there's a couple of other issues there that I have to fix. Okay, so let's start with the basics. I am actually only producing 54 oil per minute over here, and we can potentially use twice as much in the build. So what I want to do is double up on this. Now you might be wondering, if the build can actually consume a lot more than we're using, then why is this full? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. You see, the one thing I didn't really think about was that this can actually only handle 60 oil per minute, so we're actually going to have to upgrade the entire pipeline to make sure we can actually bring enough oil to the base. Now this is obviously going to cost me quite a bit of construction parts, but it's going to be worth it. That is assuming I actually remember to upgrade this as well. Now actually we can leave these two parts at a Mark 1 level, because that's going to be just fine, but we do need to make sure the oil can actually reach here. And let's see, why is this not actually doing anything? That is because it took a little while for this to be exported. Taking a look at this, this is just the ebb and flow, I think, of the particular build, but that's not going to be too much of an issue. What is going to be an issue is that I'm producing way more rubber than I can actually use at the moment, and if the rubber is going to back up, that means the sulfur is going to back up, and the naphtha consumption is going to be backing up. And as you can see, this is already happening to the sulfur. So let me see, can I use sulfur for anything else? Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to right click on it, but apparently I need to do that over here. So what things can consume sulfur? Well, we can make rubber from it, but that's what we were already doing. We can make acid from it. We are already doing that, and we have way more than we need. We can turn it into slag, which is not really what I want to be doing. Alternatively, we could be turning it into fertilizer too, and that actually only needs a little bit of limestone, so this could be an interesting option. Other than that, we can just use it for some tofu, which we're already doing, so I think this could be a nice little way to consume some more sulfur. Now we are making the fertilizer 1 over here in this build already, so all we need to do is just bring in some limestone, and then we can make the fertilizer 2. So what I'm thinking is actually removing this pipeline over here, what I just did, and then let's see, so the fertilizer is made in a mixer, and I just found out that you can actually just click on the actual building in the particular overview for the recipe and then build it like that. Now let's see, how are we going to build this? We are going to have the fertilizer coming in from the bottom. Honestly, I might just want to flip this around. That might make more sense, probably. So we can have the fertilizer come in from the upside, from the top side I should say, and then maybe the other materials from over here, like so. Okay, let me work around this a little bit and see what I can come up with. Okay, so how about this? I have now turned the chemical plant over here that's producing the fertilizer so that it is going to take in the resources from the bottom. Let me actually unpause this while I'm talking so this can be built. Then the fertilizer is gonna come in on the top over here in the mixer. I've added in another resource for the limestone, and then we're taking the sulfur from over here, which is nice and close and convenient like that. And we have not fertilizer 1, fertilizer 2, if I did everything correctly. And I will probably want to keep this filled up like that. So and then if I did my math correctly, we are producing 12 sulfur over here. This should be able to consume 6 sulfur per minute, assuming I actually use all of that fluid storage, which I am not, which is a problem, but I'll get to that in a moment. So this is going to consume, in theory, 6. Then we have another consumption over here, which is 3, and then we have another 6 over here. So that's a total of 15. and I'm producing only 12 over here. We're actually also using something for the soybeans, so it's more like 16 or 17 that we actually need. But as you can see, this is not actually operating at full capacity. So all in all, I believe we should be just fine when it comes to actually consuming the sulfur. And even if we're not, what we can actually do is flow some of this acid off and make sure that whatever we do, we are at least consuming some sulfur whenever we can. And what I mean by dealing with it when it comes to the acid, because I was a little bit cryptic there, I think, is that we can actually use a balancer over here to prioritize the output into the storage unit over here, but whenever this is full, we can have it flow into this pipeline that goes all the way over here into a couple of these liquid dumps that we have, that we are dumping sour water and acid. Now obviously, as you can see by the water pollution, I don't think we are supposed to be doing that, but this is just a fail-safe to make sure we are always getting rid of some of the sulfur, so this should never stop, because if this does, then we're not going to be producing any fuel anymore. As you can see, we are actually producing a healthy amount of fuel now once again, so all in all it's not going that bad, but I just want to have this fail-safe in place just in case, which is pretty much the definition of a fail-safe, of course. Well, the fertilizer too filled up really quickly. What I'm a little bit wondering about is why aren't we actually using it? I mean, we can use it here, right? We are way below target, so why are you not using the fertilizer? That is because it can't actually be brought here. But if I change this, then hopefully we should be seeing some trucks picking it up really soon, and thereby getting rid of it. And now we are actually able to start producing it once again. Let's see. This truck, yes, it is actually picking up some of the fertilizer. So that means that not only will my fields start producing a little bit more than they were before, we are actually going to be able to well, get rid of some of the sulfur in that way as well. So it's kind of a win-win situation. Similarly, I need to make sure that the water doesn't back up. So I added in another pipe balancer over here, which is only going to take in the water from the pipeline coming from our pumps, if we can actually make use of that, and otherwise it's going to prioritize recycling the water that is coming from the build itself. And that should just mean that there's always water flowing back into the system wherever that is possible. In the meanwhile, I built a couple of tree harvesters as well, and I'm going to need some more trucks. Now I'm just going to go with the small ones for now, just to make sure that I can actually make them. I have all the materials for that now, so let's put all of that extra fuel to use, shall we? And speaking of failsafes, I am overproducing rubber, like I just said, I believe, and we actually have a nice little way to get rid of some of that. So I've actually paused one of my old rigs to make sure that I'm not wasting too much Unity. Honestly, I should probably shut down the second one as well, but yeah, let's just turn it off for the moment, because we do have all our oil needs met by just the pumps we have in place. So that means I have a couple of cargo ships I can use for something else. And I was thinking maybe we can use some of the rubber to get some more wood. Now, honestly, there's not really a need for a lot of wood, but we can actually use this where we don't have any use for the rubber. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be a strict positive. Now, I actually don't know, do we have any better deals here? This is actually all stuff we either can't or won't be making anytime soon. This one doesn't have any trade deals. Nope, I think I'm just going to start with this one, so we can establish that. Now the real question is, how do I actually set this up? Okay, so it took me a moment to figure this out, but we can build a module that we can then set to assign to a contract. So we want this to work on that contract, export the rubber, get some wood in return. That means that's product to import, which I guess means for this specific unit. So this is going to be the rubber. And then we need another one for the wood, so we are going to set this to wood. I believe this is how that works. Let's find out if this actually does. Well, meanwhile, my maintenance is once again dropping like a brick, which is because we are once again not producing any steel, and I have a feeling that's probably because I had some coal issues over here. I needed to dig out some more of that, which we are doing right now, and well, hopefully that should mean we'll see the coal back in production really quick. Let's make sure the coal is actually on a bit of a higher priority than everything else, so this is being prioritized. Otherwise, we are going to have major troubles with maintenance once again. As a side note, this also means I can probably turn on my coal makers again, because I actually turned them off. We are producing quite a lot of wood now, so this means that we have a little bit of surplus coal coming in now. It's not the most efficient way to produce that, but hey, at least we're turning the wood into something useful. Okay, this seems to be working like intended, so the rubber is being dropped off over here. It's going onto the ship, and then hopefully once the ship is full, it's going to drop off the rubber, get back some wood, and then at least we have some of that going, and we are definitely at least using the rubber. So if we now go all the way over here to our production facility, as we would expect, it seems to be all running. Now I'm still a little bit worried about the sulfur over here, but it does seem like we are, well, we're not completely backed up yet, so hopefully now we are actually exporting the rubber once again, because this was completely full, I believe. That should have fixed that problem. Okay, so the coal mine is back up and running, and this seems to be a recurring problem, but yeah, well, it is what it is. Actually, let's see, is our little hub over here doing its job? Yeah, it seems to be doing its job. The wood chips are helping reduce the consumption of coal by fueling our boilers. And, well, the coal makers are just straight up making some coal, because there's a couple of things, I think, where we can only use coal still, like the iron production and things like that. So, at least we're turning the wood back into coal, and we're basically turning the rubber into wood and that into coal. So, not super efficient just yet, but at least we're getting there. Which makes me wonder where we should go next, and I think the answer is our water production, because we did actually unlock a couple of new things that we can do with that. So if I look at the recipe for the thermal desalination, then we can use some steam and some seawater to make a huge amount of water. Now remember, we're actually producing something like 48 steam from one boiler, so one boiler can do this 4 times. And of course then the low steam can also be used to make even more water. So honestly, that feels like this is going to produce all the water we could ever need, and then the brine itself we can probably use for something as well. What was that again? Yeah, so we can turn that potentially into salt. Not entirely sure what we can use salt for, but let's take it one step at a time. Now I have this setup over here. I actually added in the wood chips in order to make sure the boiler is running on wood chips rather than on coal whenever we can. And that seems to be working just fine. Actually did the same thing over here with the other water setup that we have, although this doesn't actually seem to be working. We're still struggling a little bit to get enough coal up and running. I'm actually thinking we are producing some coal here, but does that make sense? Shouldn't we just be making wood chips from that? Because the wood chips are being made at a 1-to-1 ratio. The wood is actually turned into less than half coal. Let me actually check the recipe. So if we look at the boiler, where are you? Over here. So the boiler takes in a little less than 50% more coal. So actually the ratios are in favor of making wood chips over coal when you're using them for your boilers. So, okay, that means that I should probably turn off the coal makers over here anyway, like I've done before. Maybe add in another shredder over here, just to make sure we have enough to get all of the wood transported into wood chips. And then that should be able to fuel most, if not all, of our boilers. I also want to see if I can do something about the landfill pollution, because honestly that's mostly this area over here, and I think that if I just cover it up with some other resources, then I should be able to do something about that. Now what I actually did is I set a huge dumping area over here that is going to flatten this entirely to +1, and then I believe if I put it to +2, which seems to be the general height of my main building area, then I should be able to just build over that. Now I should probably make sure that I don't demolish my own buildings, because, well, this is actually at +2 already. Kind of need to sculpt this a little bit, but other than that, I think this should work just like I wanted to. Speaking of landfill, I apparently dumped a lot of stuff in here, and I am still dumping stuff in here, and that's because, well, apparently I suck at setting up mining systems. Okay, so let's just get this out. I probably only need one area for all of my trucks to get in and out. So I should probably just remove all of this and then just focus on the main area that I want to get rid of. Or I should say where I actually want to get my coal, because that's just over here. We have all of this coal exposed already. All I need to do is actually mine it. Anyway, in the meanwhile, let's actually try to progress a little bit as well. So we are producing 36 water for each one of these basic distillers. We have a total of 8 of them. So if I did my math correctly, that should mean I need a total of 4 of these thermal desalinators. Well, actually, I only need 2 of them, making it from steam, because that would make the third one produce some water as well. Well, actually, it's a 2 of these is going to produce 24 steam, so it's actually kind of they come in threes, so to say, which actually means I need a total of 4 of them still, 4 of these, and then 2 of these in order to complete an entire boiler worth of water production. So actually, never mind, because no, at least never mind when it comes to the low steam, because if I put in the high steam, there's actually no steam coming out anymore. Obviously, that makes sort of sense, because apparently the steam is actually just being combined into the water itself, but there's no tripling up there. So I just need a total of 4 of these to replace the water production I already have. Okay, time for a complete redesign, because I kind of want to make sure we balance the water as well. So I want to make sure this water is being utilized first. This water is already being utilized for the farm, so I think that's just fine. Basically, I want to make sure this water goes down here, and it goes into the water production, and then into this kind of main water line we have here that leads both into the village, but also into wherever else we need. Now, honestly, we don't actually need that much water, I just realized. But still, we're going to need to be producing quite a bit of it, because I don't want to rely too much on my pumps. Speaking of which, I should probably add in a couple of pumps over here, because the groundwater has been reset. And after I remove my pump, I'm actually not using any of that anymore. So overall, I probably don't need to be producing that much water at all. But honestly, that's not going to be a problem, because if this falls quiet, that's just fine. It just means there's not going to be burning any coal or wood chips. In the meanwhile, the maintenance keeps being a problem, and that's mostly because I'm not producing either enough steel or enough maintenance parts. So I'm actually just going to increase my maintenance parts construction a little bit, and well, we can do that pretty easily now. I actually have everything I need in order to do that. Well, mostly space in order to do that. I am actually just going to boost the steel production for a little while, see if that solves that problem, and then hopefully all of that combined should mean that everything that's now slowly starting to break down is going to be back up and running pretty soon. And while I'm working on that, look at this beautiful setup for the water. So I actually have 4 seawater pumps over here feeding into these 4 thermal desalinators. Those are grasping some of the steam I'm producing here. That was the word I was looking for. Now I actually have a little bit of a steam production facility going on here as well. I have a balancer over here that's prioritizing the wood chips, but will also take coal if it needs to, and then it's going to divide that across these 2 boilers. Now I'm actually just looking at it, but yeah, that should work just fine, although I could upgrade the belts a little bit just to be safe. There we go. And then yeah, that's going to produce all the steam we need. The steam goes into the desalinators, but I again have a balancer over here that is going to prioritize the steam that is going to go in my power facility, because without power nothing is going to work. The power facility has been unchanged from before, but this looks a lot cleaner and a lot tidier than the previous water setup that I had before. Now, what is also important is that I have this balancer over here that is going to prioritize the water that's Actually, it's going to prioritize the water that's coming in from the rain collectors, or well, should it? Yeah, I think it should actually prioritize that. However, I am actually also going to connect this up, if I can. No, I can't, because it's too close, but I can cheat and do it over here. There we go. And the reason I want to do that is that I want to make sure that these cooling towers can always get rid of their water. But if that is feeding back into the turbines, that should create a loop. That should not be any problem whatsoever. Alright, so that takes care of the water. Now, let's see. I assume that takes care of the water. Just double checking over here. Now, I was talking about those pumps earlier. Well, let's add in some pumps. Okay, there we go. So I am now pumping with 2 pumps the water from the ground reservoir, but that is going to go into this balancer. It's going to prioritize taking the water from the ground. So as long as there's free water in the ground, basically, I'm going to be using that. But if that's not available, then I'm going to add in the water from my water production facility that is coming all the way from down here. Now, of course, that is also draining some of that from the water collectors. These water collectors over here are actually connected up here. And again, it's prioritizing the water from the water collectors first before taking in any water from either the pumps or the rest of that water installation. This water can only be used for the farm, so that should always be prioritized already. I say that, but is it actually working like that? I am not entirely sure, because it can still mix in here. Well, honestly, with all the prioritizing that I already have in place, I don't think it's important enough to worry about too much. But all in all, that should mean that we have a pretty healthy water situation. So my settlement has everything it needs. We're actually really high on Unity now. We are doing pretty decently on health as well. Let me double check that again. For some reason, I am not getting full health from water. Why is that? Is that just because the water is still lagging behind? Actually, I will probably have to upgrade this pipeline, because the water demand from my city is actually higher than what it can supply. So let's make sure we fix that. Consumed last month 56 out of 60. Well, it seems to be filling up faster now than it's consuming, so that's good. Am I actually getting rid of my waste? It's actually producing quite a bit of waste. Where's the waste going? Oh, it's actually being dumped over here. So that is still going to work just fine. I might actually have to add in a secondary water facility soon. But for now, it seems to be doing the job still. So let's just roll with it. And there we go. Order was restored. We have full health from water and food and everything else now. So that's looking pretty decent. The landfill pollution and stuff like that is still going strong. Although I do have to say that the pollution seems to be somewhat under control. We still have a pretty decent water pollution, but nothing we can do about that for the moment, I believe. And hopefully once we start clearing this out a little bit, we can do some of that landfill pollution as well. Only thing that is slightly disappointing about this setup is that we can't actually see it working. I mean, it's working, you can see. There's just not much to look at. I mean, that makes sense for this particular installation. Just, I like seeing my factory at work. Between the trade contract that I have going and the actual harvesters, I'm producing so much wood that my shredders actually have a hard time keeping up, which is a good thing because that means I have plenty of wood chips to feed into my boilers. But I'm actually going to extend my shredders a little bit over here, so I have a little bit more capability of actually making those wood chips. Between me having fixed my water and my coal situation and actually reducing my coal consumption a little bit, I am now actually in need of more iron. So I'm actually going to see if I can use this upgrade feature over here to get some more large excavators going, just making things a little bit more efficient. The nice thing about that is that it actually queues up by default the larger excavators, and then as soon as this one is ready, the other one will come here, be decommissioned, and then the other one will take its place. So it's super efficient. Actually a feature that I think a lot of other games could use as well. So in the meanwhile, now it's actually time to start building some new stuff again. And I actually unlocked the Ship Bridge Mark II which just costs steel, mechanical parts, and electronics. Steel being something I will probably need to expand pretty soon because I'm now boosting it. But honestly, if I'm going to be using this much steel, I will probably just need to start upgrading my production. But anyway, once we have this done, we can actually start exploring a little bit further with my ship again. So that seems worth the upgrade. Now, something I actually unlocked way back before we got into all that redesigning and, well, troubles across the entire board was the recycling plant. Or I should say the waste sorting plant. So the waste sorting plant is actually able to collect some of this stuff like recyclables and turn it back into raw resources. Again, I think this thing is super expensive. It costs 400 construction parts 3. But it will take in quite a bit of free stuff because, well, I can set my maintenance depot to start producing some of these recyclables. And I actually also think my research center is already producing this as well. This means I don't actually have to add in anything new. I just get the recyclables, and then by making sure the waste sorting plant gets to do its job, it actually allows us to start basically making free resources. So let us build ourselves a recycling plant. It's a pretty simple setup. I'm not entirely sure if I'm getting exactly how this works, because apparently this is also able to produce gold and broken glass. However, I don't think I'm recycling any of that into this, so I'm assuming it's for now only going to spit out iron scraps and copper scraps, and for that I have these two set up. So let's set this one to iron scraps and then this one to copper scraps, and let's see, I have a U-shaped sorter here sorting the iron scraps. Now I'm assuming that that means that whatever it's sorting is going to come out on the side here. So did I set it up correctly? I believe I did. So yeah, and that means that we can not only start clicking this recipe and then prioritizing this recipe over the other one. It's just as efficient, it's just going to produce a byproduct. Now I do of course want to make sure I can actually capture that byproduct, so I'm going to need to build another storage unit over here. Something like this. Let's double check the recipes. Yeah, that looks just fine. I can actually disable the other recipe now because there doesn't seem to be any need to use that anymore. And well, actually I can keep it on just in case for whatever reason the recyclables get backed up. It can default back to the recipe it can still produce because it doesn't produce any side products. Now this should be going on this belt over here, assuming this is being built. So let's speed this up because we have plenty of Unity to do that. There we go. There's some lifts in there to make sure we have a nice and tidy belt. And a look at that, we have our first recycled stuff coming out. So let's make sure this is built as well. And then I have the same thing going on over here with the resource centers, because as I said, they were already producing recyclables. Now this is not actually an optional recipe, and this stuff was just stuck in here for a little while. But we are going to be able to transport all that 320 recyclables that is already waiting for us here and make use of it now. And there we go, we have our first stuff coming out. Let's see if the sorter is doing its job. Yep, we have some iron scraps and we have some copper scraps, and that's awesome because, well, we already had this set up when we redesigned the factory in the first place, but we can actually utilize that iron scrap as well as that copper scrap now. So that just should take off a little bit of the pressure of this stuff over here. There is actually an interesting thing that I just noted, that the recycling efficiency is 25%. So basically 25% of my production is going to be recycled in those particular buildings. I mean, it's not a massive amount, but it's more than nothing, and it's basically free resources. Alright, so let's see what's next. Okay, so what's interesting is that we also have the compactor unlocked that I haven't really been using yet, but we can actually use that to press together those iron scraps to make it a little bit easier to transport. However, it feels like a massive investment to have a compactor do that, just to make sure that we have to unpack them later, because that's, I guess, what the shredder is also intended to do. So that seems like a lot of fuss just to save a minor amount of transportation for the moment. Maybe later on we'll do that, but let me know in the comments if I'm missing something obvious here. Speaking of things we unlocked the chicken farm, and that means we have a way to make some more foodstuffs. Let's see, that we can make a chicken farm with chickens, which I think we can get from our cities or the towns around in the ocean. on the islands. And then those chickens presumably are going to be producing eggs. And apparently the chickens are either going to be harvested or dying. Let's find out when we actually build the chicken farm. But then we can add some water and some salt. And then we can make meat and meat trimmings. Now the meat trimmings we can use to make compost. Let's actually check what else we can do with those. Meat trimmings can be transformed into fuel gas and compost, or straight up compost. Interesting. Not entirely sure which one of those two we want to do. Compost, I guess, is always useful. I assume we can put the compost in here as well. No, we can't, because that's a separate thing we do here. I'm a little confused. What can we actually use compost for? Okay, we can put it in a mixer and make some fertilizer from it. But first we have to add in water, because of reasons, I guess. And then we can put them on the farms as well. So we can actually use them to make fertilizer. Anyway, first things first, let's get a chicken farm up and running. Okay, so nothing too complicated. We are just going to utilize the animal feed that I was already producing, and then that's going to go into this chicken farm over here. Now I'm actually wondering how much food this is going to need. Probably more than I'm producing, but first of all, I'm gonna need to get some chickens in here. And while we're at it, let's remove this whole facility where I'm trying to make bread and kind of move it over here to the side and make it sure it's completely automated. This was just a trial setup that I made earlier, and it wasn't really working that efficiently because there was a lot of, well, non-belted movement involved, but I think this should work a lot better, assuming of course actually make sure it's getting built. Okay, so let's see, we have lots of wheat coming in that is going to be made into flour and animal feed over here, and then it's going to be made into bread over here. Now let's see, this is producing 16 flour per minute. This is also using 16 flour per minute, so this is 24 bread per minute, working like intended. Now honestly, I'm not entirely sure if we should double up on this or anything like that. For now, let's just make sure this is actually producing, because it wasn't really producing actively before. And then similarly for the tofu, I actually don't have a specific storage unit or for the limestone, so this is actually being driven in manually. Is that a problem? Not entirely sure. I don't really want to mess this up. Maybe we need to do a redesign of the food quarter at some point, but for now we're producing some animal feed over here. This is going to go into the chicken farm, so now all I need to do is order myself some chickens. And chickens are on sale over here, so let's start with, I don't know, 60 chickens, something like that. And then, let's see, do they automatically end up here? Yeah, they do actually. So those 60 chickens, it's already 61, they don't waste any time getting babies apparently. They are going to need 2 animal feed per minute. How much am I actually producing over here? So this is 4.5. And this is 2. So I'm actually already producing way more than that, so I don't think we need to worry about that anytime soon. We can triple our chicken count and we should still be fine. Is this actually producing anything now? Are we getting any eggs? Yeah, look, we have 2 eggs. And that means that I should probably go into my food storage over here. Maybe we'll just add in a new one over here. And then we are going to set this to produce, I don't know, eggs. And then how are we doing on all the other stuff? We actually have a pretty large surplus of bread. So let's just not assign this to tofu, but this to bread as well. And let's make sure we actually build that. Alright, so over the last few episodes we went from a totally disorganized, well not totally disorganized, but at least a far less organized base to something that looks, well, easily expandable, easy to find where everything is. We redesigned the liquid section over here, and over here we have plenty of food to work with, we have plenty of health to work with, Unity is fine, maintenance is actually doing fine now as well. Look at this, look at all this coal now. Now I'm actually producing again. It's complete overkill. I don't know what to do with my coal. That's kind of a weird feeling. We are actually recycling stuff now as well, which is really, really cool. which actually makes me wonder if I need another one of these plants or not, because by the looks of it, it seems to have a little bit of trouble keeping up. But I could probably just upgrade this belt and maybe fix that problem, because it seems to be mostly a matter of getting the stuff in. But all in all, that feels like we're slowly getting to a point where we're a little bit more efficient, we're a little bit more environmentally friendly, if you can call this entire factory that. But still, we're slightly making progress. Look at the pollution. The pollution is going down a little bit, I believe, although we're still at -19. I am slowly filling over all of the waste over here, so hopefully that will deal with some of the landfill pollution that we had going on. And that means that in the next few episodes we can do some more exploring. Look, I think my new ship is ready as well. This looks like a proper battleship now. And well, that means that in the next episode I have no idea what we're going to do, but we're going to take another look at the technology tree and see where that takes us. For now, if you're still here, apologies for my rambling today. I am very tired, and I think you can probably hear that, but I still want to get this episode in before all the satisfactory things get going, and I want to get as far as I can, because honestly I was about to give up during the last episode. I was really wondering, with the maintenance going to hell, with the power, the food, pretty much everything was going wrong. I was like, should I still be trying to do this? And I think the answer is yes, because we did. It seems like we've stabilized, although once again I am out of something. In this case it is actually the electronics, which is probably because I am now using all my rubber for this. So I should probably pause this for a moment. Let's just pause that so we can stock up on some rubber again and make sure we don't actually run out of maintenance, because that will be a new problem. Anyway, I digress. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.